You're listening to Fuzzled, where structure beats hustle every time. If you want marketing that's designed, not reactive, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Fuzzled, from confusion to clarity, with myself, Paul Culshaw. It's the podcast for thoughtful founders who want to become recognised experts online without the noise, guesswork, or constant content grind. Each week, we explore the systems behind authority, visibility, and sustainable growth in an AI-shaped world. Now, today's episode is slightly different. We're looking at the human side of AI. So not AI for content creation or productivity or AI for marketing automation, but AI as something that people increasingly turn to when they feel overwhelmed, uncertain, anxious, stuck, or in need of reassurance. And this is a conversation I've been thinking a lot about recently because AI tools can feel incredibly soothing. They can respond quickly, they validate what we say, and they can help us organise our thoughts. And in some situations, that can indeed be helpful. But there's also a deeper question here, because what happens when people start using AI as a substitute for being genuinely heard? What happens when agreement begins to feel like support? And where is the line between helpful reflection and emotional risk? So, to explore this properly with me, I'm joined by Charlotte Clegg. Charlotte is a psychotherapist and a fully qualified, registered and insured member of the BACP. Her work gives people a space to explore their experiences and feelings in an empathetic environment, helping them process what they're going through with acceptance, care, and deeper understanding. Before we get into the conversation, I just want to say this clearly. This episode is not about saying AI is bad. It's not about fear, and it's not about pretending technology has no value. It's about discernment. It's about understanding the difference between a tool that can reflect language back to us and a trained human relationship where we can be properly heard, supported, and, when needed, safely challenged. Also, this episode is for general conversation and education. It is not therapy or mental health advice. If someone is in crisis or feels at risk, the right step is to seek urgent professional support or contact emergency services. Okay, let's go and meet our guest today, Charlotte, in The Big Breakdown. Hi Charlotte, welcome to the Fuzzled podcast. Now, before we get started into our conversation, I just wanted to mention, for context for our listeners, that we met a couple of months ago, I feel, at a networking event where a lot of people were talking about AI, as people do talk about AI nowadays. And our regular listeners to the podcast will know that we speak about AI in terms of using AI to help you with your marketing, to help with content creation and productivity and all of that good stuff. However, Charlotte brings a different perspective, which I feel people should be aware of. So it's great for you to have joined us on the Fuzzle podcast today, because whilst AI is very effective for marketing within business as well, it's also starting to change behaviour in everyday life in terms of where people are starting to gain advice online. So I just wanted to go into a few things there with yourself, Charlotte. One thing I wanted to start with was that I was actually on a Zoom call just the other day, actually, and the host was saying how a lot of people feel quite lonely nowadays because they work at home. If you're an entrepreneur, if you have your own business, you kind of work at home. I do. But even if you don't have your own business, you might be an employee, but you're working at home as well, which you can do nowadays. So the host of that Zoom session was saying that a lot of people feel the need to be heard, accepted, and understood because they feel quite isolated. So I just wanted to bring that to you in terms of when people talk about people needing to be heard, accepted, and understood, what does that mean from your perspective as a psychotherapist?
With that need, it's a very, very basic human need. In fact, it's one of the principal human needs that we have. We are not solitary animals. We are an animal that works best and thrives when we are in community, when we are a part of a tribe, when we're in the herd. And even if you think about when you are very first born, the newborn instinct to cry is to be heard, to have its needs met by signalling to its caregivers. here I am and something needs to be done. And when you have a newborn baby and you're holding that baby and and in quite a few hospitals now promote skin to skin, what gets released is a hormone. It's the oxytocin, which is sometimes called the love hormone. And that makes us feel calm. It makes us feel secure. It makes us feel loved. And that doesn't end just when we are babies. Throughout our entire lives, when we relate to other people, when we feel like we've been seen and heard and understood, and also when we see and hear and understand other people, we have those connections. It has massive, massive implications for our well-being. Physical implications. Our immune system is better when we are working in community. We reduce inflammation, we recover more quickly from injuries or illness, for example. In terms of productivity, our stress levels go down, our anxiety reduces, we have better memory recall, we are more productive. So when we are connected to people, we just perform so much better in absolutely every area. And for our personal, kind of our internal world, it also provides us with higher self-esteem, because if we are understood, if we can relate, we gain confidence, validation from that, especially when we're getting that from people that we respect or that we look up to. And it helps us to develop as well, because it means that we can have better self-awareness, we can be accountable. In essence, it helps us to better understand not just our situation, but other people and our place within that society and those groups as well.
So there's a lot of benefits to actually being around people. It's that human connection, isn't it? It validates the point that the host was saying on the meeting that I was in terms of there's been a lot of online business, obviously, over time, over the last 25 years or so. And in the area that I work within, in terms of mentoring and coaching, we do like online programs. But she was saying that there's also a growing market now in terms of people just want in-person events. They want to go back to that human connection. One, because they need that human connection, because there's a bit of a loneliness that's happening with a lot of people. But also a lot of the people aren't trusting information online as much because they feel, or they know about AI is there, and people are starting to feel, I don't know what I trust in terms of the information that I'm seeing and I'm reading, in terms of what's human, what's come from a person, and what's come from AI. So it's kind of going back, I feel, to like 25 years ago, 1990s, the original way of doing business is more in person. So I just wanted to touch then about AI, because it's not going away at all. So we need to understand it more. So why do you think AI can feel comforting or soothing to someone who feels overwhelmed or lonely, like we've been talking about, or maybe someone feels anxious or even emotionally stuck as well? Why are people going on to tools like ChatGPT and Claude? And why does it feel soothing to talk to them?
Partly because that's how they're designed. They're designed to be very welcoming and reassuring, helpful, and always there to give you the answers. And it's very simple to use. It's been designed with that end user experience primarily in mind, especially the ones that you've mentioned, those kind of open access ones. And they can be almost oracle-like. If you are feeling very overwhelmed, if you're feeling very vulnerable, and you go and you say, here is a problem, and you get given literally in black and white a very defined answer, that is going to feel very reassuring. That is going to feel very comfortable. So I can absolutely see why somebody who is overwhelmed would feel comforted by using something that's designed to provide answers. And perhaps it's a sense of sureness when you're feeling confused.
Yeah, I can see that. And I feel maybe there's a behaviour here as well, which has developed over the last 15 years or so in terms of doing more yourself all of the time. I feel it kind of started with self-checkouts at the supermarket and places. You kind of do it yourself, and we kind of end up doing a lot of things ourselves. We're becoming more inward-looking all the time. So do you think that's just growing on that behaviour in terms of people are used to using a device and just chatting one-to-one to it and being in control of what they're doing?
I think we've become incredibly reliant for a lot of things on our devices and our phones. There was a conversation that I heard a while ago. Imagine you're going down the pub with your friends, and this is 20 years ago, and someone says to you, I wonder who is the tallest person that's ever lived. And you would have a chat and you'd have a discussion about it. And this is how the Guinness Book of World Records was invented. It was so that when you were down the pub, you could then have a look in the world records and you could find out. And obviously it's a nice promotional tool for Guinness, but That was that was what would happen. You'd have those conversations. And what if it wasn't in the Guinness Book of World Records? Or what if it was a question that was going to just be known between you and your friends? You would chat about it, you would discuss it, but you would have to be okay with not always having an answer. Now, if you're down the pub with your friends and someone says, who's the tallest person that ever lived? Time how quick it is before someone gets a phone out and Googles it. And the answer is just immediately there and done.
Yes.
And we have become so used to everything being that rapid and that final. And there is a danger, as you kind of alluded to yourself, of okay, but how do we then trust those answers when we when we see, oh, it was George Smith or whatever as the tallest person? Do people go and check on that research and see, well, actually this source isn't reputable, or maybe that was true at this point but it's not true now? People don't. They take that answer and they go, well, I googled it and it was there, so that must be true. And I think that has the Googleification of our lives has moved over into AI. We do the same. We ask ChatGPT for absolutely everything. We just take it as, okay, that's right.
Yeah, we kind of take it as given that is the correct answer. And you're right. I mean, it's quite a conversation killer in a pub. If you're trying to have a discussion or a chat with somebody, and there's always someone there who brings out the phone. So with AI then, I was thinking, is the appeal of using an AI tool to chat with, and maybe chat about things you don't want to chat to your partner with or to a family member about? Is it really because you're trying to escape feeling vulnerable in the presence of another person? So you are discussing what's going around in your mind, you are getting it out of yourself, but in a comfortable manner.
Yes, I can absolutely see that would be, certainly a potential benefit or perceived benefit, because you're not having to have a person. So therefore it removes any kind of risk or fear of, well, what if they judge me? What if they don't like what I say? What if they disagree with what I say? What if I have to kind of deal with their emotional response to what it is that I say? So if you take the human out of that, then those options aren't there. That comes with a lot of pitfalls. This is not just a question that is linked purely to AI. This is a question that within psychotherapy we think about when we're doing anything online. So, for example, I do sessions in person and I also do sessions online. And when I was deciding how I was going to run my practice to begin with, I was looking at, well, what are the benefits and the negatives of this? Because are we going to have that kind of a situation where, because I'm online, because I'm not really in person in the room with them, are they then going to feel that this isn't a genuine connection? Are they going to feel like they can't say things? And when you look at the research, actually, it's a very, very mixed bag. Some people feel that they definitely will always want to be in person and to have that in-person connection that you mentioned earlier on, because of trust, because of feeling that it's a more solid human thing. But there are also some people who say, no, I will prefer to use the online sessions, because even though you are still a real person, there is a little bit of anonymity that I feel when we are screen to screen. So it feels a little safer for me. So actually, when we measure inhibition levels in clients who are in person or if they are online, it isn't a flat answer for either. Some people will be more responsive and feel better in person, and some people will feel more responsive and better online.
So it comes back to what you resonate with yourself in terms of what feels more natural to you.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like more people are going for that online option nowadays? Is there a distinction is there a younger generation who feel I'd rather have an online session, or is it not that cut and dry?
Not at all. No, there is no kind of delineation of any demographic that, well, at least that I have noticed in my practice, or when I speak to, colleagues and people within my networks and so on. It is purely well, for a lot of people, I think it's an ease or what's convenient, taking time out of your day to go and travel to somewhere. If you are working, quite a few of my clients are very high pressure. They're in very high pressure careers. They're working long hours. They're not going to necessarily be able to take time to physically go somewhere, but to fit in an hour of on a Zoom or a Teams call is going to be a lot easier for them. Also, it depends on where you are geographically. I have clients who aren't in the UK. I have clients who are abroad. And it might be that in some of the countries that I'm working with those clients, mental health provision in that country just kind of isn't really up to what they're used to in the UK. Or it might be that their time zone means that their time zone works very well with my time zone. When they're not working is when I am working. So there's so many variables. You can't say it's an age or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the real benefits come from online, in terms of being able to reach people outside of your own locality. So geography isn't a barrier at all. That's a wonderful thing. So I've been watching recently a TV program on BBC. It's presented by a very intelligent lady like yourself called Hannah Fry. I don't know if you know Hannah, yeah. So she's presenting a program called AI Confidential. It's a very clever title. Where she's talking about implications of AI and people over in America, entrepreneurs creating AI-led companies. And she was talking about, in an episode, about AI psychosis, which was a new phrase to me. And that, you'll know more than me. But it seems to be when someone is using something like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini a little bit too much. And it's starting to, I don't know what it's starting to. It's starting to influence them too much in terms of their thoughts. And they're getting too much into just talking with an AI system. So what are some of the signs that someone might be using AI for reassurance in a way that starts to become unhelpful?
I think what might be helpful to think about is a delineation of exactly what AI is designed for and what people are using it for. With a lot of the programs that we've mentioned, Claude, ChatGPT and so on, they're open access. You can go and you can ask it absolutely anything. There are some AI, programs and devices and so on and apps that are designed specifically to help with therapeutic needs. So it might be that they are looking at things that are kind of on the admin side of things, and they are very, very helpful and very useful. So, for example, scheduling of appointments. For myself, I need to make sure that not only do I have my appointments scheduled with my clients, but also with my clinical supervisor. I also need to do continuous professional development every year. There's a certain number of hours I need to do of that. So how is that all getting fitted? So that can be, an absolutely perfectly fine use of it. There's also been some research done into when we use AI in directed apps that look at, for example, a pattern recognition in the speech that people are using to help pick up how at risk they are of suicide. So if they are, if it is able to identify that these people, that have been using this app, these are at higher risk. So therefore, we kind of need to triage them into, into speaking to somebody and having more targeted help. It can help with reducing the suicidality of those clients. So the very targeted AI seems to have some applications. But that's very much in a diagnostic way. And AI is a diagnostic tool. I've seen some fabulous things that it's doing, not just with therapy, with other, with more medical concerns as well. And also with the matching of people to clients. So say, for example, if there's an organisation that I'm aware of where if you want to use one of their therapists, you fill a form in which is taken through you're not giving any necessarily any personally identifying information. You're choosing from a number of multiple choice questions, but that then allows them to build a profile of the kind of help that you're looking for and the kind of therapist that might best suit to you. So for that, absolutely fine, no problem at all. Where the issues come in is when we are looking for core emotional reassurance, where sycophancy of the AI is the problem. This is where the AI, especially the open models, they're designed to make you feel good. They're designed to do what you want them to do. If you say to ChatGPT, for example, "Oh, I didn't like that answer," it will say sorry, and it will then say, "What would you like me to do? How can I make this answer feel better for you?" A therapist will definitely never do that. They will definitely take your feelings into account, but they will, first of all, they will want to understand why you feel that way. Is there something else that's going on? There will be a lot more exploration. It will not be I will immediately take that back and I'm sorry and I apologise and I'll never mention it again. We also see that people become quite reliant on AI. There is the ability to access it at any time, night or day, and for as long as you want it to. So let's imagine that you have had, maybe you've had a relationship breakup. It's 3:00 in the morning. Perhaps you've had a couple of beers as well. You can still access OpenAI at that point. You're not going to be your best self in that moment. You're not going to be thinking very clearly in that moment, but you're still getting that emotional reassurance from ChatGPT or wherever it might be. Is this the best time for you to be evaluating those things emotionally? Probably not. There's also, and this, kind of matches in with what we mentioned about the kind of the timings of being able to get answers immediately and instantly, is there is no space then between you asking questions and you kind of testing things out in the real world. When you go for therapy, you will be given an appointment, and then you'll probably have another appointment that's scheduled a week or 2 weeks after. And one of the purposes of doing it that way is that you go away from that session and you reflect on what has been discussed. You might have some things to try out in between those sessions, see if they work, see how you feel about them. You may think, oh, well, now that I've reflected on it, I think differently and I want to revisit that. Or it might be that you feel that's done now, you don't need to revisit those things. But you're building up that rhythm of sessions where you're working things out in between. If you have your therapist on tap in your phone and you're getting answers immediately, there is no reflection time. And so people are becoming more and more reliant on it.
So it's that two-way conversation, isn't it? I think it goes back to human presence. You mentioned there about, how shall I phrase it, careful challenge, maybe, rather than being agreeable as an AI would. So you really see the benefits of actually talking to someone trained who's going to give you that challenge. And that leads into my question, because what does a trained therapist provide that AI cannot simply replace?
The short answer is the person. But the more detailed answer to that is that when we look at research as to, okay, but what actually works? So there's lots of different kinds of therapy that you might have heard of. So it's person-centered, CBT, CFT, EMDR. There's loads and loads of acronyms of all the different kinds of therapy. So which one actually works? When we look across all of those researches, what we find is that it's the person, the relationship, the therapeutic relationship, that is the thing that gives us the best indicator for outcomes. So there was research that was done by Norcross and Wampold, and their quote is, "The person of the therapist is the most important factor on effective psychotherapy." In essence, that human connection that we mentioned right at the beginning, that's what's vital. There is a lot that will happen within a session with a therapist that simply cannot be done with AI. So say, for example, you're on ChatGPT, you ask it something, it gives you an answer. You then start crying because of the answer. You are emotionally overwhelmed because of the answer. So you put the phone down for a moment, you take a few breaths, you bring yourself back down to, to kind of being centered, you think through, and then you respond to ChatGPT. It doesn't know any of that. It doesn't know any of those emotional kind of things that have gone through. Whereas when you are in relation with your therapist, they will see all of that. They may see things that you don't even see. So it's not even a matter of you being able to say to ChatGPT, "Oh, I have just cried, by the way." You may not be aware fully of some of the emotional responses that you are having, but your therapist is trained and skilled in pointing those out. There's the accountability that we mentioned briefly before, that gentle challenge, that pushback. But it's not just about what's being said between you and your therapist. It's also about what's happening kind of in the outside world. So, for example, there are some clients who will come to therapy because they have been told that they need to go to therapy. It's not something that they necessarily want to do. It might be that a partner has said to them, "If you don't go to therapy, we're going to divorce." So they go to therapy. They don't want to be there. If when they come to therapy and they discuss that with their therapist, they can discuss the reasons why that relationship isn't working. There can be exploration of, okay, so what behaviors are you doing that's causing, issues within the relationship? What could you change? What you might want to change? With AI, because of its model to kind of, serve the person who's asking the questions, first of all, they're probably not going to be there if they're not being told to by their spouse anyway. But if they do use those services, they're not going to get that kind of challenge. They're not going to get that kind of, you are part of this situation. It is not a situation that is happening to you. It is a situation that is happening with you. So there's accountability. There's a space to reflect that I mentioned before as well. But also the one of the really big points is around empowerment. When I take a client on, what I am aiming to do is to have them leave. I love all my clients very, very, very much, but I do want them to get to the point where they're ready to fly and go and be themselves, and everything that we've learned together, everything that we've gone through, all the skills, all the practices and so on, they can then put those into effect kind of out there in the real world without me. ChatGPT, Claude, AI, whoever it is, that isn't their model. They don't want you to never use their service again. And it's not going to necessarily empower you to do things without them.
Yeah, an AI tool would want you to keep using it
Yeah.
forever.
Yes.
As it develops, absolutely. There is no end point. So what I'm picking up here, and hopefully you're picking up if you're listening as well in this episode, is that it comes back to balance, I think, or having the right counterbalance and having that reflection that AI is here, so it's not going to go away. So we do need to incorporate it and be aware of it and how people are using it. But actually the education needs to be there in terms of this is when you should use it and what you should use it for. So how can someone recognize when they need what's called human support or go to someone like yourself, Charlotte, someone trained, rather than actually carrying on with ChatGPT or starting up another AI conversation with another tool?
I think when we're talking about feelings, when we're not, maybe it's more around the kind of the interpersonal and internal feelings. If you are distressed, if you are, finding that it's not just a bad day, if things are going on for a while, absolutely speak to somebody. That doesn't mean that every single interaction that you have, every, relationship that goes wrong means that you need to go to therapy. Absolutely not. But it's not even a kind of a dichotomy between go to AI or go to therapy. Go to AI when it's helpful, when it might support you, but don't forget the human connection. You can have a chat with a trusted friend or a loved one that will be far more helpful than AI in a lot of those situations without you having to go to therapy as well. They've each got their own space.
Yeah, and it's being aware of that space and where that space actually lies, which I think you've brought a lot of clarity today to people to know where that moment is, where that space is. So thank you for all of your insight, all of your expert insight today in providing more clarity on this topic. I feel we could talk a lot longer on this topic. It's quite a deep topic as well. There's lots of facets to it, but I think we've got to address the main points around using AI for therapy and when you need to be actually having specialist support. So with that, let's move on to the next section of the show, which is called Buzzword Bingo. Okay, so it's time for a quick round of Buzzword Bingo. So this is a little bit of a lighter segment in the show where we look at all of the kind of acronyms and buzzwords within the marketing world and within other sectors as well. But those words which can sometimes confuse us, or sometimes we don't have the right understanding of what that word actually is. So we're just assuming what a certain word or concept is in itself. So we're here to bring a little bit of clarity to you on those words and buzzwords. So today, Charlotte, you've chosen the word counselling in terms of bringing a bit more clarity to counselling and what it actually means and what it actually is. So over to you to explain counselling.
So the reason that I chose counselling as a word is because I think there is definitely a misconception that counselling is for advice, that if you go and you will receive wise counsel, that if you go and you say what your problem is, the counsel will go, okay, I have the answer here for you. This is exactly what you should do. These are the choices that you should make. This is the life that you should live. In a way, I wish that was true. That would be fantastic. If I could be, the Oracle of Delphi and I could have the absolute answer and there was one right way to live your life, then that would make things a lot simpler and I would possibly be the richest psychotherapist the world has ever seen, because I would be able to give everyone their plan for their life within the next 10 minutes. But that simply just isn't the way that it works. Counselling is about exploration. It's about understanding. It's about working out what is the best thing for you, with all of your experiences, with all of your memories, your limitations, your possibilities, your capabilities, all of those things taken into play. Counselling is not telling you how to live your life. It's helping you explore how you want to live your life.
Which I think is the real nuance of it, isn't it? In terms of the way that you want to live your life. That certainly brings a lot of clarity to counselling and what it is. I think it brings a good up-to-date understanding of what counselling is. Let's go into the next section of the show then to continue the conversation, which is marketing fails and Holy Moly Moments. So here we are. This is my favourite section of the show. It's good to listen to people's stories and their lived experience, whether that's a marketing fail. But we know it's not really a marketing fail. We're just showing that we're all human and sometimes things don't work out for us. So we're just sharing what we did and why it didn't work out. Or sometimes things really work out for us. And that's a holy moly moment. So let's continue the conversation then that we were having with Buzzword Bingo. Has there been a moment for yourself, Charlotte, in terms of where the way therapy or self-help or emotional support has been talked about online, and it's made you think that this really needs to be explained more clearly because people have the wrong impression of what counselling actually is?
Yes. This is an anecdote that actually came from way back in the olden days when I trained, where we were discussing. So this was a group. This was basically the first day of being trained, and somebody said. So part of the course was that you have to have your own therapy. You have to go and have your own sessions, and they can't be sessions that you had before the training started. They had to be while you were in training. And the chap on the front row put his hand up and said, "Well, why do I have to go to therapy? There's nothing wrong with me." And everybody kind of took a deep breath and went, "Oh, wow, there's quite a lot in that sentence, isn't there?" But that idea, I've heard that idea be given at a number of different points in my life. When if I'm at a party and I speak to someone, they go, "Oh yeah, well that's all very good, but it wouldn't be for someone like me because there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me." You don't have to have something wrong, in inverted commas, with you to go to therapy. First of all, that's very, very stigmatizing. That the idea is that the client, the person, has some sort of fault that they need to be fixed, that they cannot operate, in a good way. That isn't the case for a lot of people. A lot of people have been through enormous amounts of things which have altered them, and where they have tried to find ways of carrying on, and they have tried to find ways of coping, which have helped them in the short term, but hasn't necessarily helped them in the long run. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. I think what might be helpful is if people were to think about therapy, mental health support, well-being and so on, more in the way that we do about physical health and exercise. So we all know that we should be doing exercise, but for the majority of people, that can be managed very, low level, day to day, by themselves, independently. You can go for go for a walk, take the dog for a walk, go swimming, maybe play five-a-side on a Sunday morning, whatever it might be. Super, you've got it under control. Some people might think, okay, well, actually, I want to get a bit more into this. So they start going to classes. Maybe they start going to the gym. Maybe they start going to see a personal trainer so that they can, really target something that they want to work on. Maybe there's people who've had an injury or an illness, which means that they have damaged, their arm or their leg or whatever, and what they need is really focused support from a physiotherapist. And they need to do lots of exercises with them to help them overcome that and to work out ways of moving around in the world in ways that feel better because of that target support. When I say that to people, they absolutely understand that is a continuum. That is, they can see themselves on that, and they can see that sometimes maybe I am the guy that plays five-a-side football, but I might break my leg and need the personal therapist or the physiotherapist for a little bit, and then I can go back to just playing the football on the Sunday morning. It's exactly the same with your mental health and well-being and therapy. For most people, you're probably not going to need to go to therapy. Not for the majority of time, but it might be that there's an occasion where you might need a little bit of personal training from a therapist. It might be that something happens that causes an injury and you need to go to a physio. It might be that there is some sort of illness, or it might be, when I'm referring to illness, I don't just mean purely illness. It might be that there's something, some trauma, for example, that's very long-ranging from childhood that you need to really work on. That would be under the physiotherapy side of things. Okay. Well, that's what therapy is. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's maintaining you so that you can be healthy and that you can do all the things that you want to be doing.
I think that's the holy moly moment in itself for everyone listening. If you had a misconception of what therapy actually is, that's a really nice and easy to understand reframing, I think, that you've given there, Charlotte, of counselling and how it can help everyone in small ways, if you need that, or larger ways. But it's keeping on top of your mental health, but being aware of your mental health and being able to go to someone like Charlotte to help you through those times. Have I got that right? You've summed that up okay. Great stuff. Thank you for that. That's a great reframe with Buzzword Bingo and the Holy Moly Moments. So before we finish, Charlotte, where can people find you online? And if someone listening feels like they may want to explore working with you, what's the next best step for them to do that?
So if you Google Charlotte Clegg therapy, or I think you can just Google Clegg therapy and I still come up as the top four or five results. You can find me everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on the counselling directory. I'm on the BACP website. The BACP are the people who kind of, they're one of the governing bodies for counsellors and psychotherapists. I'm on Harley Therapy as well. There's a couple of others out there, but yes, you can just Google Charlotte Clegg therapy and you'll find me. There's contact details on that, or you can just email me directly, charlottecleggtherapy@outlook.com, and we'll have a chat and see where you are on your continuum, what you might need.
That's wonderful to know. So yeah, a quick Google search, and we can find Charlotte. For anyone who wants to visit a link as well directly, we'll share a link. I'll get a link or two from you, Charlotte, after the show, and we'll put those links in the show notes so you can click there and go direct to learn more about Charlotte and get in touch with her. So, on the final plink of that piano note, what today's conversation highlights to me is this. AI can be useful, very useful. It can help us think, it can help us write, and it can help us reflect. But when it comes to emotional support, we need to be careful not to confuse speed with safety, or agreement with understanding, or soothing with support. A tool can respond, but a trained professional can notice, hold, challenge, care, and support with the professional responsibility that they bring. And in a world where technology is moving faster than our culture can process, that distinction matters. The future will probably include more AI in more parts of our life, absolutely, and that's already happening. Eventually, everyone will have some kind of AI assistant in their lives. But the more powerful the tools become, the more important our discernment becomes too. Because not every helpful response is support, not every validating answer creates clarity, and not every conversation should happen alone with a machine. Sometimes, my friend, the bravest and most stabilising step is not asking another prompt. Instead, it's being properly heard by another human being. So, thank you, Charlotte, for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here, and it's been such an interesting discussion. And to everyone listening too, thank you for being here and listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this episode of the Fuzzled podcast, do like, share, and rate the podcast. It really helps growing content creators like me. So, with that, until next time, do remember, structure beats hustle every time. Thanks for listening to Fuzzled, where structure beats hustle every time. If today sharpened your thinking, you'll enjoy my weekly Friday feeling emails, calm, honest reflections with practical structure you can build around. Join the Marketing Clarity Club at paulculshaw.com, and I'll see you in your inbox. Take care and keep building with structure.